So after we've identified some potential high quality factory partners, we can now start to engage in ideas around customization and what that might look like in terms of how they could execute it, as well as how much it may cost. A key part, if you remember, about sculpting that offer is differentiation, that unique sales proposition, answering the customer why would I buy this? And so customization from simple ways to kind of hard ways to hard ways across that spectrum are ways that we can actually institutionalize our offer and make it unique. So the purpose of this presentation is really just to discuss the best approaches and strategies for customizing your products and offers. So the easy path, some of the easy ways that you can implement. When I think easy, it's pretty much almost no different from creating a product that a factory already has. So this could be changing the color. Sometimes with injection molds, it's a bit of a pain in the butt to change color, but generally speaking, changing color is pretty easy. Changing the pattern, changing the quantity or bundle, changing the packaging. Maybe you want to change either the design or even the shape, size, and function of the packaging to protect the product. The design, just kind of some functional tweaks to the actual product. And then just some simple add-ons too. So you go find an inexpensive product from say 1688 that costs 30 cents. You have them ship it to your factory and add that in as another bundle. So all these things are pretty easy to implement. Most factories could do this pretty seamlessly without really changing the cost structure all that much. And some of these frankly can be really, really impactful changes. And so differentiation doesn't need to necessarily be earth-shattering. It can be making visual tweaks to a product that matter to make the offer more compelling. And with these changes and others that I'm going to discuss here later on, we're also going to have a module on some contracts that you can use to ensure that any tweaks that you make or any unique ideas that you implement, that you get some exclusivity agreements in place such that the factory is not going to replicate that for anybody else. Because after you find success on Amazon, 6 months later, everyone's going to be beating down the door of your factory and others to try to replicate this. A more medium difficulty level is doing a multi-factory bundle. So taking more complex products, shipping them together, constructing some custom packaging and foam and things like that such that you can bundle both of them together. That stuff requires a little bit more time and effort. You have to communicate amongst different factories, which can be a pain in the butt. And again, you may need to customize some packaging for shipping to make that thing happen. Some custom packaging could be another thing if you want to do a major tweak that may even require a mold for the package. That can require a little bit more effort. A custom add-on or feature, so not just changing the color, design, things like that. Maybe you want to do a functional add-on to the product that's different. Maybe you want to change the material on one element or something like that to make it a higher quality plastic. All those things can require a little bit more effort than just your standard kind of color change or easy adjustment. And then some of these medium changes, especially if you're doing custom add-ons, may require a small mold, right? So we're talking like a sub $5,000 mold, just a small thing that they need to cast to create that feature that you want to customize. And then on the highest level, there's some really harder customizations that can be made. Obviously, the harder it is, the longer the time and cost it is, but also the harder it is for other competitors to replicate it or even other factories to copy what you're doing. So this is things like larger molds, right? If you get more than kind of, I would say, a fist size for a mold, you're tending to get north of $8,000. If you get bigger into that, sometimes molds can cost $20, $30, $40, $50, $100,000, depending on how many you're doing, how complex it is, and the size. Because they're basically milling a standard block of metal into whatever you actually want to have created. You could also do some new materials, right? So sometimes there's some innovation. Let's say that we wanted to do carbon instead of steel for our push cart. While that's a huge differentiator in terms of performance and weight and user experience, that's not easy to replicate and do. So that would require some engineering, some effort, some testing to make that happen. And then another final hard element of customization is really just custom hardware or firmware. So if there's a board or a chip that goes into your product, that needs to be coded both from a hardware standpoint and from a firmware standpoint. So if you want a special Bluetooth function or a special electronic function, turn off or on or off, special lights, things like that, all of that could require custom hardware boards or chips as well as custom firmware from an engineer that needs to be coded. So regardless of whatever path you want to take, there's a multitude of options to implement those. The one that I prefer most is to actually use the in-house resources and engineers and product developers at an actual factory. Again, if you're finding a high quality factory that's been around for a while and has more sophisticated employees and operations, they're going to be able to implement some of these more sophisticated changes and customizations for you. It's usually the lowest hurdle rate. It's the least amount of work. You typically get a lot more leverage and ownership because they're the ones that are making the change. So if they screw up, it's kind of on them as much as it's on you. And then there's typically payment flexibility where you can do things like taking a mold cost and weaving it into the product cost for a year or something, or a certain number of units. Or because you're placing large amounts of orders with them on a regular basis, for other products as an example, they may actually be open to fronting the bill on the engineering and some of the costs that go into managing this customization. So in-house is typically where I start and want to have it happen, although it doesn't work in all scenarios. The second one is really where you take a kind of a custom product developer, and they tend to both find the factory as well as work with the factory and other partners on the customization effort that you want to see implemented. So this is really super custom. You kind of get the creme de la creme of what exactly it is that you want to see implemented. It's less work for you because you don't necessarily need to find all the factories. You don't need to be on the ground with the engineers testing everything. You're kind of just reviewing the end samples when you use an outsourced method. But it's also more costly across a number of dimensions, right? You're typically going to have to pay for all of your upfront customizations and molds upfront, which can be a big check. Oftentimes, these guys also want to take a cut, kind of similar to a sourcing agent. So you might be paying 5 to 10% in perpetuity for every future invoice that you bill for. So regardless of which path you take, these are kind of the ones that are in front of you if you want to do implementations. Again, the easier it is, the easier the options are to use in-house. The more hard it is, or the more complex it is, or the more sophisticated factory and operation you need, the more likely it is that you're going to need to use an outsourced solution for that. So a couple of outsourced solutions, I haven't personally used them, but know that they're in Utah. I've actually met with the Prouduct guys. It's literally the word proud and then duct. They did a number of Kickstarter campaigns. It's TFN is the gentleman that runs it. Really kind of sophisticated product sourcer and product developer. I trust him a lot, and we'll probably get him on for some videos and content so you can see how he operates. So Prouduct is one. Again, qualifier, I haven't used either of these. I just know them and trust them. Blacksmith International is another Utah-based outfit that can take your concept and turn it into reality, from sourcing the product to customizing it, etc. Again, with both of these, I think the benefit is that they're English speakers. They do a lot of the legwork for you. They interact with the factory. They do all the hard yards, so to speak, in terms of developing the product. On the flip side of that, you've got a lot more upfront costs typically, and you might have some more recurring costs that will eat away at your margins a little bit. So totally an option. In fact, it's best option in some situations, but it comes with a pro and con like anything in life. So that's product customization.